Africa is on X.
At Africa Melane.
9 minutes now, it is to 5 o'clock. The two-pot retirement system has now been in place for almost 2 years, giving South Africans greater access to a portion of their retirement savings. But just because you can withdraw the money, does that mean you should? That's a question we're asking Sean Kelly, Director of Parity Wealth Managers. Sean, a very good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Africa. Always great to be on with you.
We forget that there is a cost element, right, to drawing down on your retirement using this two-pot retirement system. I know people who request a certain amount, let's say the full amount of 30,000 Rand when they first ran with it, not realizing that the South African Revenue Services will want a portion of that, and of course the administrative costs that come with that as well. So you're not going to be sitting with 30,000 Rand in your bank account, will you?
Unfortunately, definitely not, Africa. It's definitely not tax-free. And I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions. A savings component withdrawal is added to your taxable income and is effectively taxed at your marginal income tax rate. So for the 26-27 tax year, those marginal rates range between 18% all the way up to 45%, depending on your taxable income. And SARS issues the tax directive and your retirement fund deducts that amount before paying you. So what you really need to think about is the net amount rather than just seeing, as you say, the 30,000 sitting in your savings pot and assuming that 30,000 is coming into your bank account. For example, let's say you're on a 36% tax rate. If you withdraw 30,000, you'd be taxed around 10,800 Rand on that amount. And roughly the net amount would be 19,200 Rand before any administration fees or other deductions are in place. And what I'll point out is the second cost that people don't see immediately is the investment growth you're giving up.
Correct. Yeah.
So if we look at that, that same 30,000 and it stayed invested for another 20 years, hypothetically, if it grows at 8% a year, you'd be giving up roughly around 140,000 Rand in the future.
Many people, though, will consider that, Sean, and go, but I need money now. I've got pressing matters that I need to tend to. And it's either I go to a bank and ask for a short-term loan at interest rates perhaps I might not be able to afford. Sadly, far too many people go to loan sharks at interest rates that are even much higher than should be allowed, I would argue, in this country. So either they do that or they tap into their future savings and be able to address the immediate concerns that they need addressed.
Yeah, Africa, you're 100% right. I mean, the reason it's in place is because people needed it, and I think the government saw how desperate some people were during COVID. Unfortunately, people need access to funds, and the reason we brought this in was to give people access without having to resign from their job to access the retirement funding. So there are circumstances when accessing it makes sense. For example, you might have unexpected medical expenses, or you could have a period of unemployment in a household and you may be at risk of losing your home, or perhaps you have extremely expensive short-term debt. And as you say, debt is a good example. If you're paying 20 or 25% on a credit card or with the loan, shark loan, the withdrawal, and you can potentially withdraw from your one pot. That could permanently reduce the withdrawal, then there is a financial argument for doing it. But I think the word is, if you can use it to permanently pay off debt, and not put yourself in a position where you're going to be in debt 6 months later, you haven't solved the problem. So my view would be use it wisely, use it as an emergency safety valve, not as an additional bank account.
Yeah, and that often becomes the shortcoming, right? Where you want to keep up with the Joneses while you don't have the income of the Joneses. You get yourself into a debt spiral that is just overwhelming. You dip into your two-pot retirement system to pay off the debt that is urgent, but then you replace that debt with new debt, which almost defeats the purpose.
Yeah, unfortunately, absolutely. as you say, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. And we see this often, unfortunately, in Africa. So I think, if you are deciding to access this 1/3 or this 30,000, I would ask yourself, kind of a couple of questions. Firstly, do I genuinely need this money, or do I simply want it? There's a huge difference between an unexpected medical bill and wanting to go on holiday. I would also ask, what am I actually going to receive after the tax and fees? Don't make decision based on the gross balance. Third, I would ask, is withdrawing going to solve the problem? If I use this retirement savings to clear expensive debt, am I going to close or reduce that debt and change my spending behavior? Or I'm going to be back in the exact same position? And lastly, what am I giving up for retirement? People tend to look at the short term. I see the quick 20,000 Rand or 30,000 Rand today, but they don't always see that 100,000 Rand or 200,000 Rand that the money could potentially become over the longer period. So accessible money is still retirement money, but I would encourage people to build emergency funds outside their retirement savings.
We often get reports almost on an annual basis, Sean, that says, I don't know what the latest percentage is, but it's way below 10% of people who are retiring can afford their retirement because we're not a savings heavy country, unfortunately. And sadly, this has contributed to that context, hasn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Africa. And unfortunately, the numbers suggest exactly that. We're just not a country prepared for, where many individuals are prepared for retirement. Recent reports show that only around 6 in every 100 South Africans are currently positioned to maintain their standard of living coming into retirement. So against that backdrop, we should be very careful about taking money away from our future selves, unless we genuinely need it. And other statistics reinforce the problem. There was a recent report by Alexander Forbes that shows us that retirees had an average actual replacement ratio of only 25%. And what that means, put simply, for those members, their retirement savings were replacing only about a quarter of their pensionable salary on average. Other reports, like from Sanlam, recently came out to show that retirement members only started saving seriously or engaging for retirement before it was far too late, only around 3.4 years before they stopped working. So the two-pot system is part of a much bigger retirement planning conversation. We need to look at how to address some of these issues, especially as a nation.
Think about it long and hard, I think, is the main message to drill through here. Sean, thank you very much indeed for your reflections. Sean Kelly, the director at Parity Wealth Managers.